All right, guys, Steve O'Connor. I'm back here. I want to give some commentary on what's in the news. Everybody's seeing in the news right now everything in relation to the shooting with the ICE officer involving the female in Minneapolis. A lot of crap going on with that. And I have a video here that I'm going to show you. And obviously, from the officer perspective, from my experience in law enforcement, I'm going to give you a little rundown on whether or not this is justified or not. And I'm not going to give absolutes because difficult to Monday night quarterback unless you're there. You have all angles and you have basically all four dimensions. And I try to tell people in video or a snapshot, just a single camera or video footage, you only have two dimensions. You don't have the before, you don't have the after, you don't have the different angles, you don't have sight, smell, all the other kinds of things that come with the fourth dimension, everything that encompasses all those feelings. So there's a lot that goes on, and that's why oftentimes things have to be judged through the eyes of a reasonable officer, a use of force expert, and that's kind of an oxymoron sometimes, in my opinion, because there are a lot of people who give opinions on things that I think are absolutely way off. But anyway, let's get this started.
Investigation will be video of this shooting, which has surfaced from multiple different angles on social media. So we want to show you the video if you haven't seen it yet. Take a look at your screen. This angle, you can see ICE agents approach Renee Good's vehicle. They repeatedly tell her to get out of her car, pull on her car's handle. She backs up and starts to drive forward when an officer then fires his weapon. So here's a slow motion version of that same video. See the officer tugging on the door's handle, and then another one standing near the front left bumper of the car, draw his weapon, and then fire 3 gunshots. As we mentioned earlier, DHS.
All right, let's pause here. Okay, so a few things that people don't know about. Number one, that officer who actually did fire, um, not too shortly before this situation, I don't know the exact date, but he apparently had an assault with a deadly weapon by vehicle. And yes, folks, when you use a vehicle as any kind of weapon, it's assault with a deadly weapon. It is a felony. So that officer apparently had been dragged and received multiple stitches, injuries, went to the hospital. So he obviously suffered at the hands of some idiot who drove away and caused him some serious injuries. Setting that aside, that does not eliminate reasonable use of force. Every officer must determine that reasonable use of force based on his experience while he's there and the rapidly unfolding and dynamic situations that can lead to those use of force situations that officers often encounter. Now, in this situation here, if you evaluate this, basically, I'm going to go back here a little bit and tell you folks what's going on. These people that are called so-called protesters, you're not a protester anymore, and you are not a simple observer whenever you are in the way of any officer doing their job. If you block traffic, if you impede the officer, if you interrupt them in the middle of the performance of his duties, you are now in violation of law. As I stated in the previous video, which you guys can go back there and see, it's on my site. The bottom line is you cannot interfere with an officer. Otherwise, it's resist, obstruct, or delay an officer. And like I said, it's any one of those, not all three. In this situation here with this car, sorry, I got an itchy nose. So in this situation here with the car, this person was obviously in the way. An ICE officer got out of the vehicle and ordered that person to step out of the vehicle. They did not. So the ICE officer grabbed at the door handle. The other officer who was in front of that vehicle as it was driving away obviously felt threatened. News flash for everybody. Police officers are not required to retreat. No matter what, we can stand our ground. That means if you come at us with a vehicle, you've seen officers shoot to protect themselves. And that's exactly what this guy appears to have done. Now, everybody's going to look at this from multiple different angles. You're going to have multiple use of force experts, supposed experts that are going to weigh in on exactly what they think this officer experienced and felt. The sad part is nobody can actually state that except the person who was standing there who made that split second determination to use deadly force. And this guy obviously did. So let's continue here.
Referred to these as defensive shots, but there's a debate this morning on whether the officer was reasonable in fearing for his life. Now, we talked to a few use of force experts. Here's what they have to say.
Based on what information I have, which is the same information everybody has, at least initially, I believe that the officer may have a reasonable justification for firing his weapon.
It was an improper use of deadly force. police officers are trained that you do not shoot at moving vehicles unless
Okay. So first guy tentatively is given his decision saying the guy would have had his right to use deadly force to protect himself. That vehicle is assault with a deadly weapon that can result in great bodily injury or death. He had every right to defend himself, and he does not have a requirement to retreat. Second officer, obviously a moron. That guy right there started making a statement that is a blanket statement that is not accurately depicted, or excuse me, not accurately depicted, accurately applied. The bottom line is when you look at a vehicle and they say that we're not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle, that means to disable it or to stop the vehicle, not maybe the person in it. That's meaning you don't discharge a gun at a vehicle to stop a vehicle, like officers shooting at tires. Basically, it's the accountability of the round. It could shoot the tire, ricochet, you could kill an innocent bystander, or somebody could sustain serious injury. So that's been discouraged. That has nothing to do with an officer defending himself from somebody assaulting him with a police officer. So already right there, a so-called use of force expert gets it wrong. That guy's a shittiot.
the vehicle is being used as a weapon. In this situation, it wasn't. It was somebody that was just failing to stop.
A reasonable officer would have moved to the side of the vehicle immediately and not been standing in front of the vehicle. Certainly, if there was an
Again, that is false. If one officer is attempting to arrest that person or is telling them to exit the vehicle because they want to detain them further, or there's further investigation, or they're ordering their arrest, guess what, people? This is another one where all people need to understand this. You have an obligation by law to comply with an officer's request. If an officer gives you a direct order, you must comply. If you do not, that is also a crime. You can be charged with that crime. Again, it is a misdemeanor. So once that officer stepped in to actually try to take that person out of the car or open the door to order them out of the car, and of course, the problem is we don't have audio here. So again, that's based on that whole four-dimensional aspect that I'm talking about, where nobody can see or hear what was being ordered or said. Nevertheless, once that officer has ordered that person out of the car, they're to stop the car, put it in park, and get out, comply with the orders. Now, what people fail to understand here is they think all of a sudden this person panics, drives off in their vehicle as if to avoid arrest. All she was doing was compiling the amount of charges that she would have received. All too often you hear judges stand right in court and would say to every single arrestee, did you not hear the officer's orders? Why didn't you comply? That is such a standard statement because you're required to comply. Now, the flip side is if the officer did something wrong, guess what? You not only have your day in court, you can consult any attorney and you can sue that officer if that attorney believes that you have a case and that the officer acted out of compliance, not in accordance with law, violated policy, any of those things. There's a myriad of reasons why attorneys, and there's a million of them, will step forth to arrest the officer. But at that time, if you're smart, you comply and people don't get dead. It's real simple.
enough time for the officer to draw and fire their handgun. There was enough time for the officer to move out of the way.
And one thing they can all
So again, that guy's false. That officer is not required to move out of the way. In fact, he was stepping in front of the vehicle, trying to create an overwhelming presence of officers there to imply the seriousness of the order that this woman was just given. In other words, he's standing there in front of the vehicle to prevent its escape. The moment that she decides to move forward with that vehicle, that is not that officer's choice. Remember, if you think of yourself sitting in a car and you're at a red light and there's a person coming across in the crosswalk, and even though the light turns green for you, do you proceed forward and just run them over? No, you have the power of that little thing called an effing brake. So that person fully knew that she tried to move forward, and even though she might have turned the wheel as the one use of force expert put out, that doesn't mean that the officer was looking at the wheel, or excuse me, at the wheels of the vehicle. That officer is going to be hyper focused on the driver, on her furtive movements and what she was doing in that vehicle. That's the focus. An officer does not take his eyes for one moment off the threat, the danger. An officer instead focuses on the danger and is not busy looking at, hey, gee, what direction were the tires pointed? In that split moment, can I just move out of the way? Bear in mind also, everybody's forgetting that there's ice all over the road. You can see in that video, if you go back, that many of those officers are slipping around even the one officer who has a hands on the door initially steps back and is sliding on the ground to get out of the way. So if your shoes can't grip, you don't have the ability to push off and move quickly out of the way. What if he slipped actually instead and went under the tire and that lady just rolled over him? Has that happened before? You damn straight it has.
All agree on is that it's too early in the investigation to have all of the facts and make a conclusive judgment. They say we're going to have to wait until investigators gather video from every angle, interview the officers, and interview multiple witnesses. The investigation.
Sorry, restarted that. So yes, the main point behind all this is, even myself included, when I'm looking at it initially, I go, is the guy justified in the shooting? I would say yes, the officer could be justified in that shooting. There's a lot of different angles to unfold. You need a full investigation. That's where you have to let the FBI and the attorney's offices and all that, or excuse me, district attorney, in this case would be the state attorney, to look into this situation. We cannot just go off half-cocked and say the guy just killed somebody for no reason. But again, you protesters out there, this is not the way this is done. All you're doing is interfering in official investigations. When anyone who wants to protest chooses to go in there and interfere with these ICE officers, there are basically three outcomes. The ICE officer could get hurt, you most assuredly may get hurt, or you will go to jail. That's usually the end result, unless you do what's called peaceably protesting. All too often, people have gotten crazy believing they have a right to protest everything. And believing that right means they can interfere with officials doing their duties, and they can get in the way, they can block roads, they can do all kinds of things. I will point out something that a lot of people don't realize. There are many people who are arrested for sometimes what we call violation of civil rights. In California, people will call it criminal threats, they'll call it terroristic threats, everything. And in fact, what it really falls under is a violation of civil rights. If you deprive somebody else of their civil rights, it can be a felony. So when you block traffic, or when you go out there and you interfere with people, or you put hands on officers in the middle doing their job, you've just taken their focus away from their safety and trying to put that person or take that person into custody, and you have now become the problem for them. That is not protesting. Peaceably protesting, you can go back and look up MLK when he did his march. People walk with signs, they march, they do everything within their rights. They might make their voices heard, things like that, but you do it peaceably. You don't break laws, and you don't violate other people's rights in doing so. The moment you've done that, you've crossed a threshold. It is no longer your right to do something when you've stripped somebody else of their right. So we will wait to see how this full investigation unfolds. This is why people should not go out and riot and do stupid things and cost billions of dollars to themselves, because what they don't realize is that every time a city is destroyed, guess what pays for it? Every working body whose taxes are collected by that city uses those same taxes to then divert resources that could go to better things to actually fix the city from what every shithead just did. All right, guys, that is my solution to it. I hope everybody is doing well. Look forward to the next video with you, and I'm out of here. I'll see you next time.